Ratchet, watch out for Bumblebee! Okay, Spike, you rat on me. I'll splat on you!
Oh, like Optimus.
And he's not as good looking.
High-rise double-pump carburetor, that's...
My voice!
We'll fight on, but we must find refuge first.
Imagination is a strange and specific form of remembering because it exists in between two spaces in time. It's an activity that operates in the present, but draws upon memory as a reference point and as raw material to create and construct something new. And out of all the groan-worthy constant collections of reboots and remakes, Bumblebee is just strange but wonderful film that absolutely draws upon the nostalgia of the past, but surprisingly not in an exploitive or dependent way, but in an earnestly and sincerely creative one. You see, Svetlana Boym, Andreas Huyson, even Immanuel goddamn Kant all highlighted a particular pattern in the way nostalgia or memories of the past can resurface in the present. Either in a deconstructive way where old accepted notions of the past are challenged and scrutinized to create new understandings. Game of Thrones is a very strong example of this because it actively challenges the dogmas from the high fantasy genre with an authentic social reality from feudalism. The other is the reconstructive approach where the dogmas of the past are reaffirmed and reinstated as a modern truth. The Force Awakens is a really good example of this as a piece of media that actively restores a particular arbitrary vision from the past. Each scholar has their own version of this binary category model, but they all land on this pattern, and you see it everywhere in life. In the UK, it's present even in goddamn bread commercials.
Bravo.
Come on.
And Bumblebee, unlike the Michael Bay films, is much more confident in how it wants to tackle the Transformers brand and the artistic cosmological vision in relation to the present. It very overtly chooses the reconstructive approach. It recreates the 1980s aesthetic both narratively, visually, and in terms of genre direction. And as a result, Bumblebee is significantly more tonally cohesive than the Michael Bay movies, because one of the gigantic problems with his collection of films is that he clearly didn't like or understand Transformers enough to engage it analytically, like the current IDW comics do, such as the awesome Autocracy miniseries. And he didn't grow up with Transformers, so neither did he restore a loving vision of the characters. Instead, Optimus Prime is like a murderous, crazed dickhead.
No, Optimus!
The lack of temporal direction is one of the plethora of reasons that f***ing Michael Bay movies are so tonally confused. Whereas, very clearly Travis Knight is a fan, and he utilizes the styles of the past to create a specific artistic temporal horizon that feels complete. An example is the portrayal of the government as an instrumental rival force. In Bumblebee, it's reflective of the 1980s kind of innocuous portrayal of authority. When they meet the Decepticons, they cooperate and they get played like a sucker, but it's visually presented in a scaled down, simple exchange. It's the complete polar opposite to the way the same situation is presented in Dark of the Moon. Unlike the Michael Bay films, the Pentagon never gets involved, there's no Hollywood scene of the bureaucrats looking horrified. Instead, it keeps it tightly shaped by John Cena and gang, which had one of the funniest moments that both dismantles and robustly put everything back together.
They literally call themselves Decepticons. That doesn't set off any red flags?
Enough!
That line immediately spotlights the packaging of the film. It's absurd, and that's one of Bumblebee's subtle goals, which is to present the past in a way that is innocuous, with no severity.
Let them finish what they're doing. Let them find B-127. And then I'll give you permission to destroy them all. Use them for spare parts. Sir, yes, sir.
It's literally got the logic of a cartoon. This is a world that doesn't feel harsh or punishing like the world that is commonly presented nowadays in genre film. It derives its mood from a childlike feeling of trust, and more importantly, power, in the sense that it's an unpunishing world where your parents could accidentally stop the entire fucking military during a car chase. There's a great book called The Mnemonic Imagination, and one of the arguments presented there is the idea of retrotyping. This notion that in modern popular culture, the past tends to be portrayed with very little historical engagement. It's just an aesthetic. When you watch Bumblebee, you don't really learn anything about the 1980s. It doesn't really make a statement about the culture or the experience of politics of the time, but I would argue that it doesn't make the presentation of the time superficial, which is what the term argues, because it's a response to the simplistic criticisms of neo-Marxism in history, but whatever. But it's an indirect engagement that conducts something different. The packaging of the story still draws a line between two different temporal points, between the nostalgic domain and the present domain, and what this line tells us is that the aesthetics of the past, with all its vagueness and innocence, is in itself a form of content, because it's a sanctuary, a social and cultural retreat where the aesthetics is an opportunity to communicate a particular glowy, meandering feel. The protagonist, Charlie Watson, captures this youthful meanderingness. There's no central goal to her journey, just someone who wants to have fun with Bumblebee until shit get real and it's time for him to leave. And as Phil Mento said, this is detrimental to the film's marketing, because there's no plot-related hook to sell the movie with, but it functionally works really well in building a vicarious relationship with the audience, and giving a tour around the glowy aimlessness but potent feeling of nostalgia. That sanctuary is made palpable here. The emotions comes first, everything else comes second. The old songs, the old fashion, they all get involved in a familiar world that feels friendly.
You found a replacement for my dad and I haven't, okay? And I never will. So I'm sorry if that makes things harder, but in 10 months from now, you won't even have to deal with me.
And in the story about a girl who can't let go of the sensitive nature of trauma, as an audience we're given a pathway into a temporal environment that is, at its essence, about rehabilitating a sense of friendliness. Throughout the film, Charlie struggles with change, with transition, and it's through her experience with Bumblebee and sounds a bit corny, but opening her heart up, that's what allows her to make it. Her story is about moving forward, but the aesthetics and the goal of the film is about taking us back, and that mismatch of different temporal directions says a lot about what the film's thematic ambitions are, which is that reconstructing the past isn't about regression or arrogance, which tends to be what it's stereotyped to be in academia, but that's a cynical outlook. In an optimistic outlook, reconstructing nostalgia is about building out of love, and that takes heart, and more importantly, creative adaptation with the present. I don't think we'll ever get out of the rut of constant remakes and reboots, because film production and exhibition has become so increasingly expensive, and there's so much competition nowadays that, not just in films, but also in other platforms and other mediums, that nostalgia and recognizable IPs are just the only real way to make your product bankable in today's market of movies in the age of Netflix and internet porno. But if current culture is going to draw so directly from the past, you might as well do it sincerely. And that makes all the difference in the world. What a stupidly corny way to end the video. That is a really dumb looking truck. Dude, your arms are completely still exposed.